And what I do is I go around and provide talks, workshops, trainings, group sessions, and individual sessions as well on the issue of domestic violence, its prevention, intervention, and how individuals can heal from the trauma stemming from domestic abuse, from domestic violence.
So we get into many things because we were either brought into it or we just had enough. Most of the people who don't show this on the podcast, and you're listening to this on your podcast radio, the green screen, because we're all using Zoom. A lot of people are using Zoom. I'm using Zoom as a platform. And the screen behind me is my mom. It's the green screen of my mom. My mom was also a survivor of domestic violence. That's how we went from X place, Chicago, to Y place, New York, and then leaving her abusive ex-husband in New York after he did lots of nasty things to me and my brother. Mm-hmm. We picked up our sister, and that's a term, you said, well, how did you... My sister came to our family because she was also domestically abused by her parent, by her father. We suffer so much, but my mother was one thing she never did. She didn't want to ever suffer in silence. And I know we used that term before. Mm-hmm. How come people suffer in silence? And I want you to think about that, Len, why I show this clip, and I'm not even going to premise it. Did you see the movie? First of all, did you see the movie Made?
Actually, I have not.
Okay, let's see. Can you see the screen?
I can.
Excellent.
Why are you here?
Can you hear it?
We don't have anywhere to sleep tonight.
I can.
Okay,
yes.
Good. Okay, here you go.
So you're homeless. I had a home and then we left it.
Do you want to call the cops now? It's not too late.
And say what, that he didn't hit me?
We need to get you off the streets. There's beds at the domestic violence shelter.
You're here. You can breathe. I'm Alex. I'm trying to piece together how I got here. My mom is undiagnosed bipolar, and she's MIA right now. I got into college. I wanted to be a writer, but I got pregnant. Now I'm a single mom.
You on parole?
No.
You got a problem with background check?
No.
This is a trial.
Oh, I'm starting today.
That's good news, ain't it, broke girl?
We compost. The bin is labeled compost. Can you read or should I show you?
I can read.
Oh. I don't think I can do this. So quit. I can't quit.
I live for my daughter.
They can kick dirt in your face.
Alex, I haven't had a drink today.
You don't leave a good man when he's trying.
And they hate the way you shine.
Before they bite, they bark.
I pay all the bills. Let you hang out with my friends. I do everything for you.
Before they hit you, they hit near you.
Trying to hide inside of it and hide how much it hurts.
It grows like mold.
Miss Russell, did you file a police report on the night you left?
No.
You can't take a child away like that. It's grounds for losing custody. This is an emergency. You are an emergency.
Don't ever let anybody take advantage of you.
You'll never, ever control me again.
I'm going to stop it right there and get back to us. Let's see. What am I doing here, Paul? Why? Stop sharing. There you go. Here's a couple thing about the movie, and you know what the movie's about because it's set up that way, domestic violence. But let's go back to the question I asked you. What are you thinking?
So the trailer that you just showed with the movie, just in those short few seconds or minutes, really does sum up how it happens, how domestic abuse happens. It creeps up on you. And it comes in bits and pieces. It comes in bits and pieces. And so back to your question of why do people suffer? Why do they suffer in silence? It's because of that creeping up in bits and pieces. And so by the time there's that explosion, like there was mention of before he hits you, he hits by you or near you.
Near you.
Near you, right? So what often happens is, and this was mentioned in previous broadcasts that we did about the phases of domestic abuse. Mm-hmm. You have the honeymoon stage, the normal stage, the escalation, and then the explosion. And so by the time it gets to that explosion, the individual has already hit near you. Mm-hmm. That's the escalation. So even that trailer, we can break down those 4 phases of domestic abuse and use that as a tool to share with folks what that looks like, how it can look like.
Here's one of the scariest things. I have 2 scary parts about, I know things happen. I know things happen to people. I know things as a life experience that goes through. But here's 2 things. It hurts hard. When someone's trying to talk you into staying in an abuse, mm-hmm. and they're close to you, maybe someone that was supposed to protect you, like your mother, and or father, or someone that was a guardian that says, and you trusted them, and they led you into continuing the abuse. That hurts so bad. That mm-hmm. damages so much. When a person is supposed to protect you as a young person growing up and you don't feel protected, there's so much shattering of future glasses that breaks prior to you even getting there. There's a lot of shattering of all internal self, of confidence, and all those beautiful things, right? But then everything gets so skewed that everything is ugly. And everything remains ugly. And that's not true. When you say, one of the clips said, rewrite your story. It's hard to rewrite a story when you're so traumatized by your past experience and things you taught, I call education. It's hard to get past to rewrite a story when the stuff that you're writing with is still so harmful.
Yes. And this is where community really has to step in. This is where community is so vital. Mm-hmm. Being a survivor of domestic abuse as well, starting from my childhood, my father was the primary abuser, and then my mother was the secondary abuser. Mm-hmm. My mother basically reacted off of the abuse that my father dished out. And then over the years, she so-called gained her voice, but she became abusive. Mm-hmm. She became abusive towards him and then abusive towards me. And then I was also abused by both of my parents, mentally and verbally too. And, the strange thing is we didn't always have bad days.
Right.
We had some beautiful times. And that's what makes this whole dynamic so very interesting. A lot of times so first of all, October is Domestic Violence Prevention Awareness Month.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so here we are having this conversation, in the month of October, which is just so perfectly, timely. And a lot of times people think that domestic abuse is just between intimate partners. But domestic abuse, domestic violence is simply what happens in the home. Mm-hmm. What happens to close family members and what happens to close friends. Yeah. By the way of abuse, by the way of violence. And so dealing with childhood abuse, for example, by the people who were supposed to protect you, mm-hmm. right? And suffering from mental abuse, physical abuse, even inclusive of sexual abuse, mm-hmm. Emotional abuse. Those things are extremely hurtful, and they have long-lasting scars because they happen at such a young age.
Right.
And so with that being said, it's like, to the question, How do we rewrite our story? And that's where the community really has to come in. Individuals like you and myself that have had these experiences and know better, to create platforms, to create opportunities, to provide levels of support for anybody that does want to rewrite their story.
Because we want to hear your voice. I mean,
Right.
and I know this anonymously, there's a lot of things people say, and I know there's a lot of scrolling going on in the world, except when I think the other day it was down for 5 hours. I'm sure a lot of young teens lost their minds. But we want to reach out to us, inbox us, let us know, because wherever you are, no matter what state you are, no matter what country you are, we have fingers. And then we reach out to people we know where you are, and to get someone next to you. And that's, like you said, that's where the community comes in. And I think that's where it's not just support. It's not, I'm just going to be here for a time. I'm going to be here for the duration. And that's where my next issue is, I don't understand why people have a hard time being there for someone in need. It's always on their time and their and their circumstances or their ability. If someone needs you, you're either going to be there or you're not going to be there. It's being there when you're on your time isn't being there.
No, it's not. And this is the issue that we have right now with the fast-paced society that we live in. COVID, though, has caused the world to slow down. And I think a lot of people have realized that the things that used to matter to them don't matter as much anymore, because they've actually been forced to slow down. And first of all, a person has to be responsible, and then they have to be response-able. A lot of times people are not even response-able. Right?
There's a difference, right? Between responsible and response-able. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You want to explain that? Because that is, we may talk about this and we call in great conversations with people, but to be responsible and response-able, boy, that sometimes may run synonymous together, meaning very close, but they're very, very different. You want to really hammer on that between being responsible and response-able?
Right. So in simplest definition, responsible is taking action. Mm-hmm. Taking proper action. But to be response-able means that you really have the tools and the wherewithal to not only take action, but also have the expertise so that if the initial action doesn't work, now you can go to plan B, now you can go to plan C, and so on and so forth. And a lot of times people just don't have the mental tools, they don't have the patience, they don't have the empathy, let alone the sympathy, to be able to be there for individuals that are in need.
So, hear this, people, and I really wanted you to because I think people sometimes say, I never knew what to do. Okay. Or I didn't know how to help. Okay. But you have to ask yourself, are you response able? Could you have if you chose to do so? Because if you want to get to someone across town and you don't have a vehicle, it's late night, it's a bus, it's you know what I mean? You're not able to actually get there. You know what I mean? So being response able also says you have to know your own personal self. And I don't want to guilt people into anything. If you're not able to do something for someone, just say so immediately. Right? But also maybe say if you can get someone to help. Maybe you know someone that knows someone. And that's also helping. You may not be able to get there. You may not be able to drive there. You may not have to offer up to $10 or to $20 to put them in a hotel. But you can make phone calls. I mean, it seems simple, but it's not. It is simple, but still things doesn't get done. Still people have a very hard time being an advocate for people.
Right. And the thing is, our society doesn't teach us how to be advocates. Our society teaches us how to be slaves.
Yes. Ooh, my God.
Our society teaches us how to be slaves, right?
Yeah.
And so we do what master tells us to do.
Right. Right.
And we're not supposed to think for ourselves. We're not supposed to think outside the box. Mm-hmm. We're not supposed to be aware of all the resources and tools that are available to us, even though they're actually hidden in plain sight.
Right. Right.
And in many cases, they're overtly staring us right down in the face. But because we are a society that's taught to be slaves, meaning go to work, earn some money, come home, cook dinner, sit in front of the TV, zone out, and then go to bed.
Disconnect.
And get up the next morning.
Disconnect.
That's it. And so if COVID has done anything for us during this time, because there has been an increase of reported domestic violence cases as a result of the world slowing down. A lot of people have come to realize, I really don't like my partner. I really don't like my family members. I really don't like my roommates. Or they get themselves, they're spending more time together and they don't know how to communicate. They don't know how to relate to one another. Misunderstandings are taking place because they've just never taken the time to really spend quality time.
And they've heard something that they've never heard before. That triggers like, I didn't know they were like that. I didn't know they think like that. Or I didn't know that they could be like that. So there's all these questions. So now I hope it opens up dialogue.
Right.
But it may open up a fight.
Mm-hmm. A lot of times it does. It opens up fights. People have to be alone with somebody else and somebody else's thoughts, but now they have to be alone with their own thoughts too.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when people get into, like, when they practice meditation for the first time, I have watched people start to melt. They have breakdowns, they cry, and they say, I don't even know why I'm crying. It's because they're getting alone with their own thoughts for the first time, and they don't like what they're thinking. They don't like the memories that are surfacing.
Right.
And the thing is, because, again, in this society, we're taught how to be slaves. One of the foundational things that we're not taught is relationship education.
Right.
We're not taught meditation, okay? In other societies, Eastern societies, these are some of the principles that are taught.
From birth. From birth. Growth. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so just becoming more aware and beating that drum, people like you and I, those listening to this, podcast, this broadcast, being the ones to beat that drum. And you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to have spent a lot of time studying. But once you know this information, now you have a responsibility, right? And
at least I
then
hope so.
you have to
At least I
decide,
hope so.
Right. And then, as an individual, you can make a decision whether, to what degree are you responsible, right? And start looking at ways by which you can help, the next person, because at the end of the day, the truth of the matter is there are a lot of people as grown adults that are suffering from childhood abuse.
Yes.
It is affecting their relationships.
Mm-hmm.
It is affecting their jobs. Mm-hmm. It is affecting just their day-to-day interactions with people, and they don't even realize it.
And I'm going to pause there because because I hear the noise when you say it's affecting my relationship now. Well, I'm too grown, and that stuff doesn't bother me anymore. I'm like, okay. So let me ask you a question. And I'm talking to you people that just shook your head, especially when you said it's affecting your relationship now. You went like this. No, it isn't. And I'm like, okay. As soon as if you immediately do this, it actually is. That's the other. If you immediately say no, it's not. It actually is, because for you to have a response so adamantly, so quickly, without consciousness, that means self-thinking, not reaction, which the subconscious speaks way faster than the conscious speak. So if you shook your head immediately, it's actually affecting you. And that's one of the signs. I'm not going to get into the how because you need to really ask because everyone has different triggers. But I'm just letting you know, if you did not go, I wonder if it is. I wonder if it could be. I wonder if it, how, if, because I've had trauma and I wonder how it rears its head into my relationship now. If you didn't ask those things, it's affecting you.
Right. Absolutely. You know, in my journey of healing and now being a life coach, and, you know, you still continue to go through things, you know, just so long as there's humans and human interaction, you're always going to run into something, right? But the point at the end of the day is to be able to take the tools that we all learn along that journey and then to be able to apply those tools, use those tools and apply them. And, you know, this thing of childhood abuse is real. Mm-hmm. It's real. It's damaging. And at one point in my life, I just wanted to sweep everything under the rug. I wanted to move on, continue to be in my marriage at the time, raise my children, and think I could just go on about my merry way. And at one day, it caught up with me. And the way it caught up with me was when I lost my first child. My first child ended up transitioning. And that was a very, very unfortunate time in my life. It was a very sad time. It was a very, very devastating time in my life. And all the grief that I had connected with her led me down a path where I felt suicidal. Yeah. And I said, something's wrong. Something's wrong with this situation. And I realized at that point that there was something more deeply rooted inside of me. And it wasn't just the loss of my child that was affecting me. And so after having gone to therapy, about a year into the therapy, I felt like I had been, for lack of better words, healed, cured, felt like I could move on. And then one day the therapist sat back and said, okay, so Ms. Twyman, tell me a little bit more about your upbringing. What was your relationship like with your father? And that's when the floodgates opened up from that point. And I had to realize, and I had to start admitting that things that happened in my childhood were actually affecting me even more than just the passing of my daughter.
I was with my grandkids this weekend, my daughters, and I had brought my puppy, and I'm looking at your puppy, but I had...
she made her guest appearance.
But one of the things that when all the kids were around, I had spoke like an alarm to my dog, like his name is Addie, and I was like, Addie. But my 2-year-old granddaughter, she clutched her hand. She was over here, but she clutched her hand, and I saw it. And I looked at her and I said, "Come." And I told her, I said, "Come here." And I said, "Are you okay?" You know, because my voice triggered a reaction. It was never directed at her talking to a dog, but the volume and the intentional stop it voice triggered a response inside her body. Rubbing her body to help release that response, because I didn't want her to hold that temperament I created with just speaking into a different direction. But it created a different tense in the air. So and then my daughter was like, "What are you doing?" I said, "We need to rub the kids. So go hug them, right? And rub them out." And she says, "Why?" I said, "Because me raising my voice at Addie created a tension that they don't know how to get rid of. The babies will cry. The ones that are walking may sit still, and then it dissipates, but it doesn't dissipate in an internal action. So there's things that we do that creates this internal action that adults hold on to that we end up regurgitating outward later when there's a response that happens that triggers it, and all of a sudden it's either physical, verbal, but it's going to come out, and it's going to come out in a not so positive way.
Right. And, that's something that you brought up, I think is extremely important. One of the things that I practice is that even if I'm in an argument or heated discussion with a loved one, children, partner, one of the things that's very important to me is still to maintain a certain level of closeness.
Yes.
In terms of distance, right? Because a lot of times we have a tendency when we get into disagreements to set up like a boardroom. Okay. And now one person's on one side of the table, the other person's on the other side of the table, right? And if we're talking about a partnership or a family member or friend situation, there's no reason for us to be at complete or total distance. So even if there's an argument or heated discussion, to try to maintain some level of closeness is really important, because now we're helping to bring down the defense walls. And that's very, very important.
We're going to do this again, and we keep this short and brief when we talk about domestic, because it's such a heavy topic. But real quickly, what's some encouraging words for people to be advocates? My encouraging word is, I'm ashamed that you're not activating to do something to help someone else. That's my encouragement. It's horrible. I'm not a good, but being an advocate, in teaching advocates to be advocates, how do you create that sense of I can help in people? Because there's a lot of people that can help that just don't, and they never thought they could, so they don't think about it. But hopefully this helps them to think about it.
So my advice is to start off small. You can dedicate 1 hour a week, 1 hour a month. Find an organization, find some type of program that you can be a part of, and actually volunteer your time. Start getting some training under your belt. Excuse me, my dog is she's asking for some attention at the moment.
Well, it's just funny because my Addy was squeaking his toy as loud as he could get it over there. So I thought that was the funny thing. I was like, he just finally calmed down. So they know better to ask for attention better than humans. At least they know how to ask. Humans tend to like, I guess I really don't need attention. I guess I don't really deserve attention. I really don't want it. But the puppies, they ask. They're like, I want play with me, come hug me, pet me, love me. We got to take notice. We got to take notice.
We do. So that, at the end of the day, that's my advice, to start off small. That's what I did back in the day when I knew that I needed to share my story in hopes of helping someone else. And as you get used to it, you find, wow, even though this is a heavy topic, but it does get easier and easier. And so just start off small.
We'll be back again this month, Domestic Violence Month. I didn't know that.
Okay.
And we want you to ask the question to yourself, am I response-able? Not responsible, response-able. And can I be an advocate? And when things are asked of you or spoken to you, do you have an immediate response? So those are the three things. Can you be response-able? Can you be an advocate? And are you an immediate responding to something? Because if you are, immediately, that's a subconscious response. Because consciousness of thought isn't that quickly when you, the active, participate in your thoughts and understanding your response. It's not that fast. So, Lynn, anything we want to say before we take off?
Well, one thing I do want to make mention too is, our parents and other loved ones that were supposed to protect us, they weren't born with owner's manuals or life manuals. And I had to come to that reality and say, you know what, they didn't know
They just didn't know.
Either they didn't know, or they were just ignorant, and they didn't realize that the information that could have saved their lives and helped them to have healthier relationships would have really changed and helped to elevate them so much more than what they ended up settling for or becoming. And so with that being said, now that we have the tools and information, it is our responsibility, and we are responsible now to help the next person.
Thank you. You guys be kind, compassionate, be safe, be loving, and get out and be active. Thank you. We'll see you guys in the next 2 weeks talking about domestic violence conversation. Thank you, Lynn. You have a great night.